Hello, Virgo. Welcome to Catalyst Energies and welcome to your astrological forecast for the week of January 9th, 2022 to our full moon in Cancer, which is January 17th, 2022. So welcome back, everyone. Special welcome to my subscribers on Subscribestar. Thank you for your patronage. I truly appreciate you supporting the creation and the production of this content so everybody can benefit from it. So Virgo rising, Virgo moon, Virgo sun, and I would even say if your progressed ascendant at this moment is Virgo, that this will be applicable to you as well. So if you haven't checked out the astrology report, the general weekly report, you can do so on YouTube by clicking on the link at the end of this video. Or if you're on BitChute, you just scroll down and you find second lunar quarter and Cancer full moon, and you get insight into the general week's astrology. This is going to be looking at the areas of life that those main transits are going to impact. So for Virgo, let's get right into it. So we are looking at our first quarter moon, which was it's on the 9th of January. As I'm recording this was yesterday, but we are really leading up to the full moon. So we're still going to look at the beginning of this quarter. A quarter moon is always a crisis point. We have our new moon, and the first square of the moon to that sun is our first quarter moon. It's a crisis in action in particular. So for Virgo people, let's look at where things are placed, right? The new moon and the sun currently, Venus in her retrograde, and ultimately this very cathartic moment of the conjunction with the sun and Pluto at the full moon in Cancer on the 17th is in the house of heart. How the Virgo person authentically expresses themselves, their true sovereign nature, their passion, their joy, their optimism. This is where we take social risks. This is where we feel romance and engage in dating, right? That's like a risk, right? When you ask somebody out, that's a fifth house type of thing. It also does represent our voice, where we find our authentic voice, where we are a sovereign node on the larger geometric fractal of reality that we are all part of, that is the materium. And with Capricorn, a Virgo person is finding their voice in the expression of leadership, of authority, of ambition in a very material way. The Virgo person not only is meticulous and has incredible astral and energetic hygiene, and is very detail oriented, but they really shine in the context of the political and social order as a whole, or whatever, right? Whatever kind of larger institutional framework that the Virgo is part of, this is where they find their true joy, is in the expression of these Capricornian aspects. Well, this is exactly what is being overhauled, not only because Pluto has been here for years. Now we find that Venus in her retrograde is initiating this very deep inventory of meaning and value in this realm, meeting with the sun over the weekend on the 8th actually of January, and this catharsis that is going to be initiated with the sun and Pluto meeting on the 17th of the full moon is really signaling that the framework in which a Virgo person is really able to express their true nature as an individual and as a sovereign being is changing. And when that type of framework changes and the meaning of it is brought into question and the value of it is brought forward for consideration, and ultimately it is the new moon in Capricorn that we set intention to let it burn away. So some people, I think, have been waiting for so long for this to really unfold, that when the full moon does come, it will just be a reinforcement of what has already intuitively known and felt about the return to the source of our power. And for the Virgo person, it will be within the context of society as a whole. Now, if this is related to, this could be children, this could be, like I said, dating, romance, taking social risks, gambling is part of the fifth house. anything that gets our blood pumping and our heart opened, for good or for bad, right, is in the fifth house. And so that is what's changing, because it is Capricorn and the social and political institutional structure that the Virgo person really finds their voice in aligning with. So leadership, like I said, ambition, power, and really being part of the materium. So ultimately, I think that because Virgo has this incredible potential for astral and energetic hygiene, that many Virgo people, especially if you're on the pathway of awakening and evolution of consciousness and just being awake to what's happening right now, this is something that's been a long time coming. That doesn't mean that there won't be surprises or something that comes out of the woodwork, but I would say that the real, it's really about Chiron and the Aries element and the eighth house that is, and Neptune in the seventh house for the Virgo person, that is going to be much more of a sticking point, perhaps, or certainly being brought up to be realized. Because well, let's just get into it. We'll go through the chronology here so we can understand. So we had a first quarter moon in the eighth house, Chiron in the eighth house. Virgo, I think, has been being pulled back into savior mode, in the shadow of their relationships, and no more, right? I mean, many, and this will certainly be the case for a while, because Chiron's going to move through Aries over the next many, many years. So these themes will continue to come up for the Virgo person. But there's something about Mercury in the sixth house, right? Mercury is ruling this chart as a Virgo. It's in the sixth house, which is the Virgo house. And its relationship to Chiron. It's a sextile to Chiron. And the moon in this eighth house. I think that Virgo has been really grappling with being pulled back into an old identity based on trauma and triggering and past situations that have nothing to do with your true nature, which is your fifth house. But you have been pulled back into counselor mode in some ways, and to take responsibility for other people's shadows rather than your own. And there is something with this third quarter moon in Aries that, yes, was in a square to the sun in the fifth house, right? Sparking a remembrance, a very innocent and very just unadulterated, in some ways, very pure spark within each of us that reminds us and gave a sensitivity to the Virgo person of, you know, what is it that actually, where do they really find themselves? Where do you really find yourselves, Virgo, in the space of your relationships? And what is that spark of divinity within you that you feel in this space? Because you don't want to necessarily get caught in the wounded healer aspect, which I think many Virgos actually are getting consistently pulled back in. This spark and this sensitivity to the realm of the shadow, the realm of the dark night, the realm of the subconscious, and the realm of what we produce together. There was something reminding the Virgo of what it is that sparks that compassion and that desire to be compassionate in the first place. Now, granted, the first quarter moon squaring the sun at this point is, what are we going to do, right? Because there's a lot of energy and focus, again, like I said, in the realm of your personal voice, how you express yourself, where you take social risks, where's your joy, your optimism. This has a lot to do with children, playfulness, finding your voice, right? And the Kundalini moving through you and really bringing you to a sense of bliss at an individual level. So, but what pulls you back in here is something to do with more than just yourself, right? It is a remembrance of what sparks that compassion and that desire to be compassionate in the first place in the space in between your relationships, the power dynamics. because you don't want to give up entirely. And I think Neptune in the seventh house has been a real challenge for Virgos for years, because not only do you naturally just give yourself over to your relationships in a very full and unifying way with Pisces, and very empathic with Neptune here, it has increased and dissolved everything back into this very base constituent experience, right? It is just the field of consciousness that is brought out in you, in your relationships. And if you are in line with the highest relationship, well, Neptune in Pisces here has been allowing you to fully immerse yourself in that relationship to source. But if it's been, if Chiron has been very active here, I think that it can be very disempowering to have had Neptune here, because there's no boundaries here, right? There's no boundary between you and other. And if you are engaged more in escapism, in fantasy, in martyrdom, in propaganda, in addiction, all of these things that Pisces, especially Neptune and Pisces, can initiate or bring forward, then I think the Virgo person has felt an unnecessary amount of responsibility for shadow that is not theirs. But there's still a reason to be engaged, because the Virgo person truly finds their spark in the space in between their relationships, in what is created and produced in their relationships. So, although this square here with the moon is this crisis point, you can release the energy, or the energy could have been very easily released and transferred through Mars. Mars in your fourth house. Yes, there's conflict in the home, in the inner life, and in the relationships of your family. But there's also an ambitious and warrior-like energy acting on the meaning of what holds you together emotionally, where you draw your personal power from. And so this trine with the moon and Mars during this week, at the beginning of this lunar quarter, is the perfect outlet, right, of that spark that has maybe nowhere to go, or keeps getting recycled back into being responsible for other people's shadow. That spark and that sensitivity to that spark can easily be funneled and have an outlet through Mars, which is very outputting in procuring and bringing back in this kind of circuit what it is that you come to understand about the nature of home and family and your inner life, where your personal power comes from. And this is important because Cancer, and the moon in Cancer especially, is traditionally the fourth house. And so with that full moon in Cancer in the 11th house, right, it's important that you are taking the time right now to in this moment, release that spark into an action that procures, an action that brings your understanding back to you, so that you have it for later, because you're going to need it, and almost right away. So also too, like I said, Mercury in sextile to Chiron. Mercury is the chart ruler. It's going to station retrograde this week. So there's a healing potential if you are able to really invest your mental energy and acuity in terms of what is right in front of you and what you're doing on a daily basis to reconstitute and purify yourself, right? Where is your mental energy is very focused on putting things where they belong and being in alignment with this process of self purification and, self-care, discipline, details. It's really what's right in front of you that you have actual control over. This is, I think, an incredible moment of potential letting go of the responsibility for other people's shadows, right? Because it's really about what you're doing, what's right in front of you, what is your self-care, what are your routines and habits with the world that is impacted by you. And with Saturn here as well, I mean, it really gives you a backbone in this area. And so that no matter what, it all comes back to a very stable and secure alignment with this type of work. And so even in its retrograde, when Mercury goes into this introspective, internalized review period of all of this incredible mental energy that has come through in the last week, it's still going to give you the opportunity to, again, find a healing moment and to release the wounds and the trauma of other people's shadows that and your own as well. I mean, it's important to realize that this can be healed in terms of your own shadow when you are committed and you have an incredible amount of patience and authority and mental energy towards the actual everyday activities that lead to who you are in your relationships and your binding contracts. So big release here. Also, when we talk about Saturn, we see that Black Moon Lilith in the 10th house is in a trine to Saturn on the same day. This is all Sunday the 9th, the third quarter moon, the trine between the moon and Mars in Sagittarius, and then the sextile with Mercury, and then Saturn in a trine, an air trine to Lilith. So here's where I feel like that shit's really going to hit the fan for Virgo in their public professional life, in the social context in general, that it's not so much sitting back and being complacent, but it's about holding your own in the midst of some very primal, very powerful, very self-preservation type of energy needing to come out in either your career, your professional life, your public life or persona. Perhaps this is a perhaps this is a crisis point for some people, that who they've been in their personal life or who they've truly been in their professional life is coming to the surface, and it may initiate a personal crisis for people that they cannot get around. That's the thing about Saturn, you can't get around. But for the Virgo who has been actively working towards being the best version of themselves they can be, what they're going to find is that this release of something in the professional or personal life, the social or political sphere, will be heard regardless. And it's going to be this backbone in the realm of personal reconstitution that's going to hold the Virgo person in the face of a very animalistic and self-preservation type of expression. This is something that's deeper than just our own subconscious. Lilith, Black Moon Lilith, is our connection to the original feminine blueprint, and she will be heard, right? So it's a good thing in some ways that Saturn is here if you're aware of this, because then you won't be blindsided or panicking when this aspect comes out in your professional and public persona that institutes a crisis you're not going to get around, okay? So, but I don't get that sense too much for anybody that's going to be here listening to this, but it could be. It certainly could be. So as we move forward, like we'll go forward a day here, Virgo, and see that right away, Neptune is kind of flipping the script on Mars and the Sun, and is now creating tension with Mars in the 4th house, but also that tension can be harnessed and then applied and invested into the Sun in the 5th house before this really profound cathartic moment meeting Pluto at the Pluto return point of the United States natal chart, no less. So Virgo people, it's not only a personal catharsis in your own expression of self, but you're going to find that the entire social and political realm, the materium itself in which you express yourself within, is also going to go through a massive overhaul. So Mars is going to try to fake it till he makes it, right? He's going to act in accordance with what he knows is happening. And so we'll find ourselves acting out all of the things in like pretend or make believe, or just knowing that's what's going to happen. So we put the mask and the glasses on and act it out, thinking and with the intention that that is going to be our outlet. The square here is getting just doused with Neptune and Pisces for everybody. But this, again, is about relationships and your interpersonal relationships as a one-on-one situation. Again, is going to really challenge this activity or this action or this self actualization in the realm of family, home, inner life for the Virgo person. So this is our last push through Sagittarius. So we want to get the most out of this and really harness the really conflicting energy of this square for Virgo in terms of personal relationships. It's one thing to feel secure in your home and family, because this is still about the individual in the fourth house. It's another thing entirely when you've completely dissolved and diffused yourself into the structure of relationship in general, and that's going to be where the real challenge is. But you take that and you apply that in a sextile to the sun in the fifth house, and you realize that you can invest and harmonize with a expression of yourself, right? The sun in your fifth house, like really finding and shining forward and finding your voice in the way that is truly about your voice, right? Which is about working together with people, with the dynamic interchange of a particular ambition or a particular growth of something, right? A corporate structure, an institution, all these Capricorn things, taking leadership, being fearless. And so again, if you are aligned with surrendering to the source at the highest, then yes, there is going to be a conflict here with acting out the meaning of where you are secure and safe emotionally and your inner life and your home life. But you can take that and it can really just influence and expand so much this sense of self for the Virgo person in the relationship with each other, in terms of what are we all doing here together? What are we working on? What are we each investing into this process, and what are we getting out of it? So there's like healthy competition here with a group in relation to another group. This is the motivation for like a free market, for instance. But for the Virgo person, it's about the free market of your own heart. Finding the motivation and being activated by a surrender of the self to the universe or to source or to God. Now, again, if you are surrendering to the propaganda, to false idols, to escapism, to fantasy, all of these things that Neptune and Pisces could be, then yes, there is going to be, again, an activation or an investment into a part of yourself or a way you've been expressing yourself that you are still holding on to, right? Because it's false. And it's going to be a hard fall, I think, for Virgo people in terms of who they are and who they are in relationships during this week, if they are not, and I say they because I feel like most of the people who are going to be watching this are already ahead of the curve and are just waiting to let this aspect go. They're waiting for this cathartic moment to fully feel into their own emotional security as society is crumbling and erupting around them. So we go a week ahead to the full moon, speaking of which, and we're going to see exactly what this is going to look like. So we have the moon in Cancer, like I said. This is, and you come very sensitive to the social order in general in this type of situation. So it also show you where you're, is the center of your personal power truly going to hold you in the context of the social order, especially as Lilith comes into a square with Neptune. And this is very tumultuous, very, very tumultuous. This is a very drastic and almost, I don't want to say violent, but certainly aggressive re-establishment of balance. And in the 10th house, it's, again, professional life, personal life. I see some Virgo people that are trying to hide something or trying not to come to terms with who they are in their contribution to society, needing to come out and be addressed. And again, in square to Neptune, it's not going to be easy. But for the Virgo person that has been in tune with this process and really set very clear intentions with themselves about releasing and transmuting essentially themselves within the collective framework of society and the political structure, this is not going to be as difficult as for those who have been either asleep or locked into binding agreements with some sort of disempowering agent of Neptune, right? False idols, the propaganda, all of the things, the escapism, addiction, right? If you're giving yourself over to your addictions, to your fears, to your fantasies, right? Not actually in any kind of compassionate, mystical and humanitarian way. Oh boy, this is going to come right out, and it will not be suppressed. So I'm interested to see how this turns out. But ultimately, Virgo, you will see where your security and feel, not even see it, but it'll be a full illumination of your security and your personal power within the context of society in general. So Virgo, I'm going to leave it at that. That is plenty of information to work with for the time being. So I'm so sorry. I didn't want to stop as I'm finishing up here, but it's a lot of speaking. So Virgo, if you are interested in a reading or energetic work to support your process, you can stick around to the end of this video and get some more information about how to support this work, to book a reading, to check out the website. All of those things are going to be available. You can also check out the links in the description, and that'll take you to all the places you need to go. So I'll see you on the next new moon video, Virgo. That's going to be for our Aquarian new moon in your 6th house, by the way, at the beginning of February. So until then, take care. Have a great week, and we will check in soon. Bye, Virgo.